Hello, BookTube. Books with Thanks back again with another video. Today I haven't done this in a while, but I'm going to talk about video games again today. And today I'll be ranking the Metal Gear Saga franchise, directed by Hideo Kojima with Konami. And I really want to focus on this series. I want to rank these because it's one of my favorite series of all times, but also because it is very sci-fi heavy. I think especially as the games get later or further and further along on the timeline. And I really want to focus, a little bit of my channel, some of my time here on narrative in video games. So, before I get into this, if you haven't already and you want to see more content like this on my channel, it would mean a lot if you could please like and subscribe. Thank you. Before I get into the actual ranking of the 10 games I have played from this series, there are a number of games and different spin-offs and types of different games that I haven't played. So I'll go through those. There are a few important notable exceptions on there. Any big super fans of the Metal Gear series out there, please, don't hate me for having missed a couple of these. So the games I haven't played, Metal Gear Snake's Revenge. This was an old, I believe it was an NES kind of spin-off that Hideo Kojima didn't even direct, and he didn't even know about it, apparently. And it is like the unofficial sequel to the first game, but there is a more official sequel, and from what I've heard, the actual sequel is better, and I really enjoy both the original Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, so I have no interest in really ever playing this Metal Gear Snake's Revenge spin-off pseudo-sequel. Then Metal Gear Ghost Babel, which apparently is a version of Metal Gear Solid put onto the Game Boy, or the Game Boy Advance, or something like that. I haven't played this. Don't really, I mean, I don't have the physical console. If there's any big reasons out there why anyone thinks I really need to get this one under my belt, let me know down below. But yeah, this one's not really on my radar. No big interest in playing that. And now here's the big one. I haven't played through all of the original Metal Gear Solid for PlayStation 1. Please don't hate me. It's just not the version that I've played all the way through, and the one that I have played all the way through, I've played through multiple times. We'll get to that in the ranking. Next up, with the Metal Gear Solid VR missions, I have this, but I've only played like a handful of the missions on there. And then I haven't played either Metal Gear Acid or Metal Gear Acid 2. And then I never played the original Snake Eater version of Metal Gear Solid 3. I've only ever played the Subsistence and HD versions of that third game. Then Metal Gear Solid Online, I believe this was like part of MGS4. Also, kind of here I'll mention, like, if there have been like a phone or like app games for Metal Gear, I haven't played any of those either. And I haven't played Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. I plan on playing that actually maybe sometime this year. I've heard pretty good things about it. I haven't played that one though. And then I should also mention that because Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain is such a large game with so much side content, I should mention that I haven't 100%ed that game. I haven't done all of the, every little side story. So with all of those important notes out of the way, here we go. In 10th place, I'm going to put Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops for the PSP. Now this game has an interesting story, interesting art design, using like those in-motion kind of comic panels. Another game later, further up this list will show that they got better at making this type of game and making something for the PSP. But with Portable Ops, the gameplay loop is it gets pretty tedious, knocking out soldiers, dragging them back to your truck over and over again. Again, the story's okay, but I do think it takes a while to get going. There's a part where Big Boss himself, he gets kidnapped, and there's like a rescue mission to go get him, and then also around that time, the Null character, I think is what he's called in this one, turns out to be Gray Fox, he starts to show up. All of that stuff is like maybe 2/3 into the game, so we're pretty close to the end by the time that any of like the more interesting story beats, I think, start to really kind of filter in. It just kind of makes me sad that this is where we met Roy Campbell for the first time, chronologically. And that this was like our first outing of seeing Big Boss leading soldiers, leading his own kind of private army, and it was presented in this kind of clunky, awkward way. I'm just not the biggest fan of Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops. Next up in ninth place, and I'm not putting this one down for quality, more just for brevity, this is Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. So this is like the prologue chapter to Metal Gear Solid 5 Phantom Pain, the game proper. And I think this game is outstanding. I think it's some of the best, like 2.5 hours or whatever you could have playing a stealth action kind of game. The graphics are amazing. The kind of hook of, okay, we have to go get these two people. One's in a cage outside. What's happened to the other one? Really, really compelling stuff. And then once you do that, once you think you've accomplished the mission, then the hammer falls and you hit that big explosive kind of climax. And I mean, just from a storytelling standpoint and everything about the presentation of this game, I love it. It is short, and I think just for that reason, all of the other games on the series, or of this series, further up this list, gave me more moments and more like fond memories of them. So yeah, ninth place, Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. In 8th place, I'm going to put the original Metal Gear for the MSX computer. Now, I didn't play, or I don't know if it was a computer or a console. I didn't play that original, but I played the version of this game that was in the Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence collection for the PS2. And then again, I played the one that was on the HD remaster. But I really like this game. I love the music, the dum 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 dum. I love that. Cool soundtrack there, or like it just really gets in your head. And yeah, I like the game. I'd never really played a top-down stealth game like this. I thought it was cool. At this point I had already played some of the later Metal Gear games, so some of the Metal Gear Solid games. So going back here, it was fun to see where a lot of the ideas started out. And then just kind of naturally we'll move from my 8th place to my 7th place with Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, the sequel. Even though this is one spot higher than the original, I think this is like, there's a pretty big gap. I love Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. Everything with like a certain kind of climactic moment there in the middle where you have a bridge crossing and Gray Fox shows up in the Metal Gear, and what Dr. Madnar does in this game, really cool twists and turns, really interesting stuff, figuring out what you have to do with the damn pigeon on the roof, going from building to building to building. They all have their own unique kind of layouts and designs. Really, really fun stuff. And even more than the original Metal Gear, this one you could see they were setting the groundwork for a lot of the amazing things to come later. So that's 7th place, Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. In 6th place, I'm going to put Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. I first played this for the PSP, and then I played it on the HD collection for the PS3. I like this game a ton. Biggest knock against it, though, I don't necessarily like fighting big tank-like, mech-like bosses too much. Like, I'll take a Metal Gear fight or two every game, but when that's kind of every single boss fight, I'm not the biggest fan of that. Some of the like side content, especially in that like 5th chapter or that 5th act of the game, where you're just like doing so many missions, so many random little pick up random knickknacks, building Mother Base. It's just like, okay, here we go, let's go, let's just do enough of these so we can finally unlock the next actual important storyline. There's a little bit of that, but I do think this game improves on the controls, the presentation, everything that it seems like they were trying to do in Portable Ops. I think they did so much better in Peace Walker. I think the story here is interesting. I like the whole deterrence idea that's kind of been in the background and like part of the conversation in the other games, but in this game it really comes front and center. So yeah, 6th place, I'll put Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. Then, in 5th place, I'm going to put, maybe controversially, I'm going to put Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. of course, love the gameplay. Not a big fan of the story. A lot of the missions, a lot of the side content or the story missions, there's not that much difference between how engaging they are. So if I'm in the mood to play some Phantom Pain one day, I'll play just a few missions, and but then none of the missions in and of themselves get me particularly excited. The only stuff that really gets me excited to return to this game, now that I feel like I have the mechanics under my belt, and I've spent a lot of time in the world appreciating how it was crafted and how great the mechanics are. I just want to kind of go back maybe to see some of the side storyline cutscenes and stuff that I might have missed the first time through. That's the only thing that's really bringing me back or making me think about returning to this game. The whole language thing isn't like as a big premise and like kind of part of the villain's plan. It's interesting, but I don't know if it works so well as a twist. I think they could have kind of introduced that earlier on and then elaborated on it like over the course of the game instead of getting code talker so near the end and then getting into everything with the conversation with Skullface. And yeah, I love the cassette tapes and like listening to David Bowie or listening to whoever or Billy Idol or whatever while you're like sneaking up to somewhere. That's really really cool. Love that. Again, technically like it looks and plays great. Love that about it, but on a story level, on like a how compelled I am to return to it level, I gotta knock it down to 5th place. Then in 4th place, if that last one wasn't controversial, this one might be. Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes. So this is the version of Metal Gear Solid, the first one that I played, and that I've beaten a couple of times. I did not have a PS2 when I started to get into this series, but I did have a Wii, so I could get Twin Snakes for the GameCube, and I played it that way just to see if the series was for me. I later invested in a PS2, but yeah, I played this, my first entry into the series, loved it. The over-the-top cutscenes didn't really bother me that much just because it's kind of all I knew, it's the first way I experienced this stuff. And also, since this was my first stealth action game, from what I understand, people had a problem with the first person being in this game when the levels weren't really designed for it, and the first person kind of breaks it a little and makes it a little too easy in sections. I actually I enjoyed how easy it made some of those sections, being that this was my first time kind of stepping into this series. So yeah, I really, other than that, other than those, what I understand to be kind of the bigger problems people have with this remake, I think everything's pretty similar to the original, and I mean, I just love all the bosses. I love, the whole keycard system. That's just an updated, much better version of what they tried in Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2. But yeah, here in Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes, it's just so interesting, and the characters are so rich, and there's a little melodrama and a little overacting every now and then, but yeah, Liquid Snake is hilarious as a villain. The whole Foxhound unit is unique and so much fun to take down each and every one of them. And then, there's some heart too, like taking down Psycho Mantis and taking down Sniper Wolf. It's kind of sad at the end of both of those fights. Yeah. Love this game. 4th place, Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes. In 3rd place, I'm going to put Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots. Now, of course, this game has a ton of cutscenes. So much of your time playing this is just spent sitting and watching them on the plane in those briefing scenes, or watching Sonny make some eggs, or Drebin explaining his guns and his gun system and his weird little monkey thing with his cola cans that he's always drinking, or Johnny pooping in a bucket. But then there's amazing cutscenes too, like everything that happens on the river in Russia at the end of, or I think it's in Russia at the end of Act 3, Russia or Ukraine, somewhere in there. But yeah, everything that Liquid Ocelot does there, So cool. Everything with Raiden, I really like how they updated his character. That's really neat. And then, of course, the return to Shadow Moses in Act 4. That's brilliant. And the Ray versus Rex boss fight at the end of that is fantastic. Snake crawling through the microwaves, the extended epilogue, all made me so emotional and so happy that I invested so much of my time in this really powerful and really fun series. I do wish that like the first couple of kind of levels or areas that you're in the game, first in like the Middle East and then in like South America, specifically the South American one, seemed the most open and the most like the location that really let the mechanics of this game shine. Some of the other stuff, like some of the other locations, didn't really seem to show off how good the gameplay actually could be in this game. So that might be one of the only things, and some of the longer, more weirder cutscenes might be the only couple of things that knock it down from a higher first or second place. Speaking of which, in second place, I'm going to put Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty Substance, I believe is the version that is on the HD or the HD collection on PS3. I played Sons of Liberty for PS2, and then I played the HD version on PS3. I think this game is so fantastic. I think it gets all of the cheesiness like just perfectly. Like it's so campy, but never. I don't think it ever overdoes it. None of the bits overstay their welcome. Really cool ideas of how, sure, the first three games in the series or the first sequel, Metal Gear 2, and then the next one, Metal Gear Solid, all kind of started to retread a lot of the same ground. And this game is all about being a sequel, basically, and what it is to be a sequel and retread, or have to retread the same ground, some of the same ground as what came before, to, you know, give fans what they're familiar with, how to mix that up, though. And of course, the Raiden character reveal is a big part of that. I don't mind him at all. And I think a really painful kind of gameplay section, like leading Emma through the flooded kind of section of the Big Shell complex, leading her through that, and then, you know, sniping the drones and things that are coming after her, and then a really quick kind of second encounter with Vamp there. Really tragic moment with Emma after you've worked that hard, kind of really pulls us, the players, into the emotion that the characters are feeling. Just brilliant stuff like that all throughout this game. Interesting stuff about AI taking over the world. This is where it starts to get really sci-fi. And like sci-fi dystopian kind of. And yeah, just this game brilliantly, I think, expands upon the lore and the world building of the Metal Gear franchise. And I think this one plays better than Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes, and they both have very similar mechanics, similar gameplay styles. And this one just plays better. Then in first place, probably not surprising, anyone who's a big fan of this series, I'm going to put Metal Gear Solid 3, again, specifically the Subsistence version with the updated camera angles. Things like that. Oh my gosh, I love this game. It is amazing. It is from the first kind of prologue mission with the boss's betrayal of Jack. Excuse me. All the way through everything you have to deal with in the jungles and eating snakes and all of the really detailed like medical kind of repairs you have to make on yourself, and collecting like items, and the fact that collectibles are sort of like, it's all this medical stuff that you can use, or food and stuff while you're like foraging and like hunting and stuff. It's really cool kind of gameplay mechanics, unique to really just this game and this game alone. And on top of that, you have an amazing storyline that really builds the foundation of the lore. This is like, you know, the earliest we get in all of these games, so it's so much fun seeing Big Boss before he was Big Boss and seeing how we got to that point. And of course this has I think this has some of the best pacing too of any of these games, and like, because once you get back, you're like, okay, I have to find this one scientist, okay, now I have to go up the mountain, then you go up the mountain, and then you see the big kind of fortress, and then you have to go into the fortress, and then you get caught, but I guess, yeah, you get caught, and then there's a whole escape thing, trippy boss fight in the river. Again, also, yeah, the boss fights in this game, love them all so much. The fear's a little, but for the most part, I really, really like all the boss fights. Yeah, and yeah, so then after that trippy kind of boss fight, then you go back into the fortress, infiltrate it yet again, this time with a better plan, more clear objectives, and then you have just this like amazing kind of three-phased, what would in any other game be a final boss fight. After that's over, and it seems like there's a victory, there's one last confrontation, but to get there you have to kind of escort Bleeding Companion through the woods, and through the forest like one last time, so you're really putting those survival skills that you learn throughout the game all to the test. And then at the end you get just one of the most perfect final boss fights of any game, of course against the boss herself, and it's amazing. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. The 20-minute or so, 15-20-minute or so cutscene that plays then, that explains what Eva was doing, but also explains the point of everything that the boss character did throughout the game. It's very emotional, and I mean, as Big Boss sheds a tear at the end, I hope I'm not alone when I say us gamers were also, and I think there's no better testament than that to how a video game narrative can be just as powerful as literature narrative, can suck us emotionally into the experience just as much, if not more, than a lot of literature. So yeah, first place, Metal Gear Solid 3, Subsistence. All that said, thank you so much for watching. Have a good one. Bye.